All of Good evening and welcome. I'm stretching. Wow, what a long, long week. And I have a very sweet treat for all of us. I have Miss Elite United States with us, Candice Woods. She is an amazing, beautiful woman. And if you're just to scroll through her pictures, you would say, wow, she has a master's degree. She's a teacher. She's a mother. She's a beauty. She has it all. But I am here to tell you that Miss Candice Woods is joining us in just a few seconds. And what you see is deceiving. So I was just telling everybody that you're here tonight, Miss Elite United States, or yes, I got it right, United States.
Yeah, you got it.
I got it.
It's a long title. It's really long. It fits on this long sash, so it's long.
Yes, and also Miss Elite United States Woman of Achievement.
Yes.
And I really want to find out more about that, because you are not just someone that has done pageants all your life and you do it because you want a collection of all the crowns and this is just what you work towards. And, you know, that's all well and good. There are a lot of women out there that have expanded their minds, have expanded their talents through pageants, but
yes,
that is not exactly how you got involved. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about you and your title and how did it start?
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm definitely very new to the pageant world. When I first had the opportunity, like a friend of mine, Leilani Duckwitz, hey Leilani, she and I met through our children's school, and it was just by chance. We were talking about just like what we've done in the past. And, you know, I think a pageant was coming up on TV or something. And we're like, oh, we should watch it. And she's like, Candice, I've done pageants before. She was Miss Long Beach back in the 90s. And so throughout her career, she's done coaching. She's judged pageants. And so she's like, Candice, you have an amazing story. You need to share that. And I'm like, well, you know, I'm not even sure. Like, there's no way. And so here I am a year later, almost to the day, like in March, actually. So in March, it'll be 1 year since I competed for the very first time. So, you know, when she said it, I was like, yeah, let's do it. I'm a person that, like, if someone challenges me to do something, I'm going to take that challenge on. For example, New Year's Eve, maybe, you know, a glass of champagne in or two, someone's like, you should run a marathon. Okay. So after that, I ran 3 marathons after that. So
oh, wow.
I take the challenges and I embrace the challenges and I use those opportunities to grow. So I decided to do Miss California United States, which is a completely different system for my age category, which is 40 and over. And I decided to do it 3 months before the pageant started. And mind you, women prepare a year in advance, to really nail it. And this is a really big system. It's not something smaller. I know Women of Achievement is a smaller pageant, but we're getting bigger. So I went full force. I cut out everything you can possibly think of. Like, all I had for a strict 3 months was a diet of protein and vegetables and a little creamer in my coffee in the morning. No sugar, no fruits, nothing. And so that's another thing. You get into the best shape that you possibly can. Then you have to start digging into your personal life. Like, what is your cause? What are you wanting to do with this? And you don't want to just go out there and rock a smoking body with a bikini on. And unfortunately, pageants have a really bad rap for that. You know, you're subjecting yourself and letting people objectify you and judge you. But I think you have to be super confident in yourself and your ability to go out there and say, you know what, that's not really what I'm here for. So I worked really hard. I'm looking at my pageant book, and I'm looking at all my notes from when I started. Like, you have to identify your attributes and, you know, qualities that are going to stand out to the judges and what makes you different. And I really had a lot to say. It took me a very long time. I was really hard on myself, but, you know, you really have to present yourself and interview well. So I interviewed, I did all I had to do. I did some mock interviews.
Uh-oh, you're frozen.
Frozen. How about
Okay. Oh, we're back. We're back. Radio silence is over. Okay. So you were saying that you did some interviews.
I did some mock interviews, and the one mock interview I had, they annihilated me. I felt like I was just so unworthy of even doing this. And so I worked so much harder. And, you know, in hindsight, when someone gives me that feedback and I don't feel like I'm good enough, it's just going to make me work harder. So in hindsight, it was great. So I competed, and I ended up becoming first runner-up for my very first pageant. Totally excited, totally satisfied with that. Didn't think I'd ever do another one because it's incredibly, incredibly expensive. Still paying it off. I needed coaching. I needed long blonde hair because my hair was super short and multicolored. It was kind of in a wild phase. So you just kind of have to clean up your act a little bit. And I think you have some pictures of me as Miss California or Miss Orange County getting ready to compete. So, you know, I nailed that. I worked really hard. I decided not to do another pageant. However, a lady that goes to my church that I have never met sat in my seat at church. And my boyfriend at the time was like, this is where my girlfriend normally sits, but she's not here. She's at a pageant. Well, that particular lady was the current Mrs. Elite United States or Mrs. Elite California Woman of Achievement. Oh. And the next week I walk into church. She's like, hey, girl, did you win? I'm like, first of all, how do you know? It was pretty hush-hush because I don't broadcast it because of such negative feedback from the first one. I've lost some friends over it. And, you know, like I said, like pageants are either well-received or not. Mm-hmm. So she talked me for 5 months to do Woman of Achievement. And I said, I just can't do it. So finally, 3 weeks before California Women of Achievement, I decided to do it. Worked really hard for 3 months, came up with my platform. So what is my platform and why did I do it? You know, I grew up I really wanted to do something that was meaningful and will make an impact. And so what that was is mentoring foster kids. So I grew up in foster care for about 14 years of my life. So in and out of foster homes. And, you know, I was born in Connecticut to two people who were probably, from my assessment, you know, speaking as their daughter, were probably not very capable of having children at the time, not mentally stable anyway. Alcoholism in full effect. I think we moved down to Florida, and, you know, from there must have been a split. I don't quite remember exactly when, but I remember most of my life being out here in California, traveling up and down California between San Francisco, down here in Orange County, LA area, and at one point we were in Hawaii. Mm. So if I dig deep and start thinking, my mom was following a man who was a merchant marine. So that's why we were going back and forth from San Francisco to Hawaii. So during these times, her whole world was engulfed in this man. My mom was adopted, so I'm sure there's some issues with that going on. But at the time, you don't know. I mean, I'm 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Excuse me. And so, you know, my life at that time seemed super normal. I didn't know until later on in life that this is not the life that a child is supposed to live. So what kind of life did I live? I was living in 14 different foster homes. And the times that I was with my mother, we were living in our station wagon. We were living in people's houses or apartments. We were living in shelters. We were living in hotels. We were super transient and no stability whatsoever. But again, I knew nothing different. This was my norm. And, you know, when I think about kids now doing the same thing, I don't get sad because of my life. I get super emotional thinking how damaging this is to kids. Mm. And it's just so unfortunate because I see students like this that come through my classroom and they are so affected. And they are affected how? Oh gosh. I have so many notes. So I've done so much research just for me alone. Yeah. I mean, their education is completely interrupted. moving from one foster home to another foster home, you may live, like, for example, I live in San Juan Capistrano, but there might not be any foster homes here in San Juan Capistrano, right? So they're going to move me to Norwalk. Well, I have to get uprooted from my friends, my family, my neighbors, my favorite teachers, and then I have to head out into some random person's home that I've never been introduced to. I have to start a brand new school. It takes a while for the transcripts to go from one school to the next. And so it's just like a crazy, crazy whirlwind. And could you just imagine a toddler being ripped from their home? Even though their home environment is awful, that's all they know.
Yeah.
That is their mother. That is their father. They don't know any different, right? So that's normal to them. How they're being treated is normal. They don't know any different. Being a foster kid or having any adversity in your home is kind of like a hidden truth. You don't go and broadcast it to everybody. So education is super affected. The mental and emotional issues that develop over time, the statistics for an aged out foster youth, that means they stay in the system until they're 18, they have a 25% chance of having PTSD. And that is higher than a veteran coming out of war. So and so you have to think the abandonment issues, suffering multiple losses, like your biological family, your friends, your neighbors, your teachers, pets, toys, clothes. I remember there's times where I went from foster home to foster home in just a bag of clothes, and sometimes nothing at all. And so there's wonderful organizations out there that actually, I think I sent you a picture of me sitting on the stage with
Yes.
bags. And so they have organizations like Together We Rise that people can raise money, and they actually, that one particular was bags for the kids. And so we stuffed it with blankets and teddy bears and, tiny little essentials like toothbrush. And, they give those to the kids immediately upon removal of the home. And so it goes on. And so when we talk about, like, Candice, what's your focus? It's like, I don't even know how to focus, because foster kids are the most vulnerable youth out there. There is so much that gets affected. And so there's some statistics that I sent. And so, like, there are about 500,000 children in foster care at this time in the United States. 200,000 age out. 20,000 age out, sorry about that. And so what that means is that these kids are transient throughout the foster care system. They're constantly going from home to home to home to home. When they're in middle school and high school, they become kind of unwanted because they have all of those emotional issues. They have the drug use, they have the educational issues. And if you're sitting in class and you don't know what the heck you're doing, you're going to become a disruption in the classroom. And then there goes you're getting in trouble. You're that kid. It's endless. It's endless. And so, I lost my train of thought. The statistics. And so these people who age out of the system, 38% reported emotional problems, 50% used drugs, 25% of those who are incarcerated were in foster care. 48% of the kids that are in foster care graduate from high school. And let's see, 2% of those people get a degree. 2.
And I want to stop right there. I want to ask you something. 14 foster homes bouncing back and forth, place to place to place, with a mother, parents with drug addictions, alcohol, on the streets, living in a car, living all over the place, right? That's your childhood.
Yeah.
And you're reality. Sitting here with a master's degree, and everybody listen to this. GPA 4.0.
Yeah.
That is something to be celebrated. How in the world did you do that?
People ask me all the time how, and I don't have a relationship with my dad. I don't have a relationship with my mother. My biological brother, I think you have a picture of my brother and I when I graduated with my master's.
I'll find it.
I don't have a relationship with him anymore. And these are long stories. He lives in Sweden now with his wife, and he was there the majority of my time in life. And so, we don't have that. And I really hope at some point we develop our friendship, a relationship. But yeah, how did I get that? Well, first of all, I barely passed high school. Like when I moved in with my dad at 14, almost 15 years old, I was crazy unruly. We were allowed to drink if we wanted to, not wanted to, but go experience it or whatever. I cut school. I told teachers, you know what,
Yeah.
I was really bad. I would spend like my entire 10th grade in in-house suspension. I just didn't care. I was just like, this is freedom. This is what life is. Like, I can do all this. I can cuss out teachers. I can cut school, whatever. And then Mr. Soup was my history teacher. It was 1992, right when the war was ending. I just was like, is there anything that I can do to pass this class? And he gave me a D. That D allowed me to graduate. So that was pretty bad. I was in the lowest level math classes, and now I teach math. I teach engineering. I teach intro to biomed. It's a medical detectives class. And so I look back at where I was in high school, and I thought, never in a million years did I think I was going to be here. I wanted to be a person that worked in New York, and I just... I don't know the movie offhand, but you wear your suits and then you wear your sneakers and you go walking at lunch. That's what I wanted to be. Yay! Huge success. Whatever that was, I didn't even know, but that's what I wanted to be. So I don't know, as soon as I could get out of my house, I got out. At one point I was suicidal. I popped a bunch of pills in front of my stepmom. And I was rushed to the hospital, had my stomach pumped, and that was, I think, immediately after high school. And I just was at the lowest point in my life. And I just knew that in order for me to break the cycle of whatever cycle that I was living in, I had to get out. And I ended up getting out, and that was through an avenue of a guy that I was dating. He was 6 years older, and he ended up going into the Border Patrol. So we went Border Patrol. We moved down to Texas. And during that time, all I did was go to school and I worked. And I worked 3 jobs at one point and went to school full time. I just had to break the cycle. And that's the part that people don't want to do. They don't want to leave what's familiar. And I think having the life that I had from living from foster home to foster home, that this was no big deal to me. It's like another foster home. You're just moving out on your own and you're, being big girl. So I did that. I worked at Red Lobster for a very long time. I got my degree, my bachelor's at Texas A&M in Corpus Christi. And a friend of mine who went through our credentialing program with us together, she's like, come out here to California and live with us. My husband is in the Coast Guard. And during that time, all it was just complete drive. And all I kept thinking is, I don't want to go back to Connecticut. I don't want to live there. I don't want to be homeless. I never want to be homeless. I never want to stand in another line at the soup kitchen with a bunch of homeless men who are smelly. I just could not do it. And it's not that I thought I was better than where I came from, but I knew that there was a better life. Yeah. And so you just put the grit in. You move, you push, and you work, and you do whatever it is that you need it to do. You sacrifice the partying, you sacrifice having time with your friends, you just sacrifice a lot, and you got to be okay with that. And so I guess the reason why I was okay with it was because I was abandoned all the time anyway. So I was always by myself. And so my friends, I kind of always put them at an arm's distance, and putting them at an arm's distance kept me safe. So that mentally kept me focused on what my goal was. So I moved out here to California and I got a job, and I've been at the same school now. This is my 17th year there. So long time. That's complete stability. And so that's what foster kids don't have, is stability. Yeah. So I'm proud to say that 17 years is a long time. And I love it. My kids, I work at an at-risk school. It's a Title I, and it's 85% Hispanic, low socioeconomic, free reduced lunch. And I've been asked several times to go to different schools, and I just can't leave. They're hard, they're tough, but I've developed such a reputation that Miss Woods is real. She'll tell you to your face what's real, but she also does the nurturing part of it, but that comes after we've established the mutual respect. And so taught, did that, and then I decided to do my master's program. And so teaching full-time and going through master's, I just, again, not that a 4.0 is going to do anything for you, but I just had to prove to myself that I could actually do it.
Mm-hmm. So. Oh, and you did. You did in a big way. I just put a picture up here to the broadcast, and this is a quote from one of your students. You're giving a noogie to a young boy here outside, and it says, Miss Woods is one of our favorite teachers. She is funny, cool, and teaches us a lot of different things.
Nathan, he was so funny. He was one of those kids that you just don't forget. So yeah, he was a good kid.
And now you're also awarded, my goodness, you're awarded all over the place. This is an award. This is you at school. And this was in Achievement for Teaching. What exactly was the title of this award?
So there's been, in 2005, I was Teacher of the Year. And then I was nominated again, I think a year or 2 years later. You have to go through a cycle. And so I've been nominated several times throughout the years, but PTA recognized me as the most outstanding teacher at our school last year. So that was really good.
Congratulations.
Yes, it was really cool. So, I spend every waking minute in my classroom. From the moment I get to my class, I open the doors and I have students in there in the morning. I have students in there at nutrition. I have so many kids in there at lunch. It's like, can I step out for 10 seconds? But they feel safe there. They're comfortable. We tutor, we get a lot of work done, but they just, what warms my heart is that they want to be there because they feel safe there.
And so how can you help these children that you teach? Some of them, I'm assuming, are probably in a very similar situation as you were as a child. Mm-hmm. Or the other children in the foster care, the 500,000 kids in foster care. How do you see yourself reaching out to them?
Here's the problem. With foster kids, they're completely protected with the system. You really don't know who is who. And even at my school, unless I have a foster kid in my class, I don't know who they are. I mean, I end up finding out who they are because other, friends of mine are teachers and they're like, okay, hey, you should talk to this one. But it's not, I don't feel comfortable going up to a student and saying, hey, you're in foster care. I think my school knows that. And I've put it out there like, hey, I could do a group with them. They can come in for study group. They can do whatever it is they want. But I think, again, they're protected. Mm-hmm. And so if they're not my child immediately, my student, then it's hard for them to say, go talk to Miss Woods. My students only know my story when someone gives me an excuse. For example, I'll nameless said, I'm like, where's your paper? Where's your pencil? I'm poor. I can't afford it. And I just went like, don't give me that. Let me tell you my story about being poor. And I just went, bleh. And the kids were just like, and then they're like, really, Miss Woods, like, tell us more. And so that's when I hear excuses and justification of why they're being what they're being, that's my trigger. That's my way in to say, don't use that as an excuse, because it is no excuse. And then I say, I grew up in foster homes. I grew up in shelters. I grew up in a hotel. And that kid actually is having a really hard time right now. And I said, don't make that an excuse. Go and ask for some paper. Go ask for a piece of, whatever it is that you need. We have it. Use your mouth. Like, ask. Don't let your past or your current situation define where you're going. And I think that's, that's the victim mentality. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it took me a long time to get out of victim mentality. Yes, we're victims. We are mentally abused, verbally abused, sexually abused. I mean, it goes on, right? Yes, we are the victims. We are the child. The adults have done this to us, etc. But at a certain point, you got to be like, I was dealt these cards. Now I got to get out of that. And so how do you break that victim mentality? And I think that just goes with growth. That just goes with being with the right people, getting out of the environment that's going to suck you back in.
So how do we get someone like you, who is very, very powerful with the children that you work with now, especially with what you just said about no excuses, that most everything that these kids do need, especially for learning, they're in a school, it's going to be there. You just have to ask for it and not surrender to that victim mentality. How do we get you out there so that you are able to do what you want to do and help even more? Because from what I'm understanding, you want to mentor.
Yes.
You also want to be able to be there for that child that feels like they have had enough. They're done. They're suicidal. Where do they go? Where do they get help?
And again, I know the foster care system has gotten better with that. But I think kids get kind of just numb to it all, right? And so I think if they're talking to people that haven't lived their life, they kind of just, they get counseling. I got a lot of counseling, which I'm super grateful for. And so, it depends. Maybe they don't all get counseling. I spoke at Orangewood Foundation, and I walked in with my sash, and these kids are super tough, the girls, and have the little ones. And so it was like from maybe kinder to first all the way up to high school. And I just looked there and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through this? Right. And so I spoke, and I'm like, I'm sure you're thinking, like, who is this white girl who looks this way? I have this, your first impression of me is that I have no idea what you're doing or what you're going through. And I said, as a matter of fact, I was sitting right where you're sitting. I was actually a resident here. And so that changed their whole entire outlook. So I think having lived the life makes you more credible. And so they have doctors and lawyers and community members come in and, do good and give their spiel. But the counselors were like, that was super impactful. Like, the kids are going to remember that. So, how do I get out there? I'm trying. I keep wanting to go and do speaking engagements and, hey, I'm available. Let me come out. And I just don't hear the feedback, and I don't get the response. What do we need? We need mentors. And people are like, well, my life wasn't like yours. It doesn't matter. Everybody has a story, right? You can use something from your life to show these kids that there's an opportunity out there, even though their statistics is a 2% success rate. 2% success rate. So I'm wanting to go out and talk. I want to go all over the nation. I want to be one of those motivational speakers that actually get out there and I don't care if you're in foster care or not. There's direction, there's hope, there's ways out, even though you think you can't. There are opportunities out there, and it's a mindset. It's what are you willing to sacrifice? And so, I just went through a women's retreat, and she talked about symptoms of scarcity. Like, don't settle anymore. Quit bending with the way things are going. Don't need to tolerate anymore, and stop storytelling and telling yourself these things that are keeping you where you're at. You don't need to do that anymore. And so I just want to, have some direction, and I have all these things that are in my mind, and I'm trying to, focus and try to put it into one avenue, but these kids just need so much.
I have Raymond here. He's bringing up a very interesting topic. He's saying mentoring is hard to deal with. The problem he's seeing is getting cooperation from the child who wants to be helped. And he continues on, there we go, or refuses to accept the help. So if I'm understanding this correct, Raymond, how, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, because I can only empathize with you, with the child of having everything taken away from you, and you're moving from place to place to place, and maybe you have a bag of some of your items, even if those items are just clothing items, and you have to pack up and move, and you don't know where, you don't know what that's going to be, you don't know who those people are, and the scariness of that you would just become so hard and hardened to the point to where a child may be completely closed off to the help. How do you break through? Do you know how to break through to them?
Are you asking me or Raymond?
I'm asking.
You're asking. You know, I actually had a mentee who aged out of the system, and we are no longer united. She decided to break the mentorship because, you know, she says the schedule was not matching. I really personally feel that there was more to it. She had just found love. She's 23. I was like that, and I saw me in her. But you can't just come in and change their life. You really have to peel the layers of that onion, like seriously. And it's delicate, right? It is so fragile. You could say the wrong thing and you've lost them. So it's like you're tiptoeing, you're like crawling on, you're like, on ice the whole time thinking, but it's really about listening. It's really about validating. And it's really not, you should, because the word should to me is very scolding. Like when somebody tells me, well, Candice, you shouldn't have done that. Is there a way to have rephrased that? I'm sure there was, and so they have such developmental issues. Like, first of all, our brain isn't fully developed until we're 27 or 23. And so you have to think about what's happening in this child's head. Here comes a mentor. You say you care, but how do I know you really care? You could leave me at any minute. Mm-hmm. And so to build trust is the very first thing. And that could take a week. It could take a month. It could take a year. But the thing is, to be a mentor to foster kids is consistency. Showing up even though they don't show up. Even if you know they like, oh, they might blow me off today. You're still waiting at Starbucks waiting for them to show up. And you're also making them accountable. So, for example, if so-and-so didn't show up at Starbucks, we were supposed to have a coffee, meet and have a discussion or a talk or whatever, and they didn't show up, you make them accountable. And you let them know, you know what, that wasn't cool that you did not show. You could have, called, but I always like, if that ever happened to me, I would say, but hey, what happened? You kind of like break it in easily and not come out so scolding. I took some time out today to meet with you. What happened? I missed you today. And that kind of builds that safety trust with them. And so, I mentor kids at school every day as a teacher, right? And some days I'm just like shaking them, like, what are you doing? Right? But sometimes some are harder to crack than others for sure. So it's just building that trust, building that relationship, and it's a slow process, very slow process.
I can only imagine, because there's only so many times that a human can have everything and everyone taken away from them, that you wouldn't have just that gaping wound of trust is hard. Trust for people that have grown up with normal childhoods, and something could happen in their life. Maybe someone lies to them, or a spouse, does something they shouldn't do in their marriage. And then all of a sudden, just look at that one simple thing. Were they tormented as a child and everything taken away from them? No. And that's a much harder thing to go through, but it's still a trust issue that once that's broken, for a lot of people, it is darn hard to try to repair that.
Exactly. And could you imagine a child?
I can't. No.
I build that trust. Like, you're supposed to trust and lean on the people that brought you into this world, and then you're ripped apart from that. How do you recover?
Right. Exactly.
Right? How do you recover from that?
Here's another topic. Raymond here, again, he's mentioning about, and I sympathize as well with him. From a broken home. I've been without a father since I was 5 years old and forced to move out of the house at 16 because my family had, the house that his family had.
Stepbrothers and sisters are made.
Stepbrothers and sisters made things difficult.
Mm-hmm. I had stepbrothers and sisters too. They never got to do anything. They didn't have to do a chore. They didn't have to work. I had to work at 15 and pay and give them half my check when I moved in with my dad. Like, really? And meanwhile, my stepbrothers and sisters did nothing at all, not picked up one dish Like, and I felt like I had to do all the chores. I had to give them money to live there. It was just like, wow. And then again, that's another hit, because when you're moving into foster homes that have their own children, then you're like, here, poor me, and here's the good child that has everything all lined up. You know what I mean? You understand what I mean by that? It's like, I put on my website, on my page that I created, My Hope, a forum for foster kids and aged out youth. There's a video, The Misconceptions of Foster Kids, and we have we are humans and we have feelings and we want to be treated just like them. And I know there's a lot of really good foster homes out there, but I've been in some really bad ones too. So, there are people that do it for money, and it is hard. It doesn't even have to be a foster kid. Like Raymond says, like, you could live with step parents and still feel the same way as a foster kid does. It's really, really sad. And I think parents really need to get out of their own heads and really take into account psychologically what's happening to these kids. Mm-hmm. Divorce. I'm a divorced woman. I have 2 boys, and our main focus was our kids, and our personal issues were set aside, and we're going to make sure that our kids are happy and healthy and aren't affected by any of this.
And that was my next question. I wanted to move on to talk about Mommy Candice.
Yes.
Everything that you've gone through of moving all over the place, going to 14 different foster homes, living with step siblings and a mom and a dad with alcohol and drug abuse issues, and living on the streets and living in a car. And I mean, the list goes on. And then you make it into college, you stick with it, you then get your master's degree with a 4.0 GPA. You're an awarded teacher. You are Miss Elite United States Woman of Achievement, and you are a beautiful mom of 2 boys.
Yes, my 2 babies. I can't even imagine my life without them. And, when I sit and I talk about my life, and they know my life, they know that my mom wasn't a good person. They know my dad was, we don't have a strong relationship, or none at all, I should say. I just can't even fathom doing the things that people do to their kids. I just can't. I mean, they are precious. They are so innocent. They are wild. They are rambunctious. They drive me crazy, but man, do they love their mama. And I just adore my babies. I work hard for them. And, as a teacher, you have a set salary. And so, you take on other jobs. Like, I sell luxury shampoo for extra money to pay for their sports. You do whatever it is that you have to do. I own my own home. It's not a humongous house, but it's nice. It's decorated. It's clean. It's
your home.
It's everything that I never had. They have their rooms, they have clothes, they have an animal or 2 to take care of. They just have what I consider a very normal childhood.
We have a great compliment here from a friend of mine, Robert LaRue. One of the things men find most attractive in women, whew, is brains. A woman who achieves a 4.0 with a master's degree is top shelf.
Yeah, I do pride myself on that. I'm very humble in the fact of what I've accomplished. Our Facebook now is our photo album. And so I post my memories. And when I see my memories like that, I do think like, wow, people really do struggle, with college. And, I look at I barely passed math. I was in the lowest, and here I am, a math teacher, and my kids are top-notch kids and they're working really hard. And I do like people to tell me I'm smart. It's a nice compliment. But I find sometimes that people find it very intimidating because I've achieved and accomplished so much, and it's all been on my own. So, yes, people get so intimidated by that. And so
yes, absolutely.
I have to turn. Sorry, my battery's sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. Take your time. I'm going to put a few more pictures up here. I have a darling picture up here that I had just a second ago, and it's your son. And from what I understand from the story, he saw a homeless man and wanted to feed him.
Yes. So I am aligned with a community organization called COA, and they are, it's called Community Outreach Alliance, and what they do is they provide free events for the kids in San Clemente. It could be anything. They do music nights, they do comedy nights, they do yoga, they do fitness, they do all these little groups. And so one group that I'm very passionate about is the Food Connection. And so with the Food Connection, we pick up the senior citizens. They live in a community like, low income, whatever. I don't know if it's local. It's pretty nice. They overlook the beach. So we pick them up every other Saturday and we feed them, and they kind of just go through our line and they take what they need. And when I first started that a year ago, I just was like, that was really hard. My very first day there, I went home and I cried, and I'm like, I used to be on that other side. And it was really hard for me to get through that. And so even though they're senior citizens, it's still the same feeling. We do have military families that come through, and they're there with their kids, and it breaks my heart. But I'm glad that there's organizations out there that feeds people. And I just remember in line at soup kitchens in San Francisco, waiting for that next meal. And that's what these people are doing. They just need to be fed. And we just love that. And so my kids volunteer with me, and we make like little baggies for them. Oops. We make baggies for them. And, we had a bag of supplies for him to give to homeless people. And this guy he's just the sweetest little man that sits there all the time. And he's like, Mommy, let's feed him. And so he picked out the meal at the grocery store and walked up to him, and look at their smiles on their faces. It just melts my heart. So my kids are learning to give back and to be humble and grateful for what they have.
And I truly believe in that as well. I've been very, very fortunate. I'm scrolling back. Here we go. Trying to get that picture up there again. There is your sweet son that saw the homeless man and insisted on feeding him. And I've been very fortunate of being able to raise my children with a strong parental support system, and really despoiling them. They have everything that all the normal kids have. And this is one thing that I do as well, to be able to reach out to homeless, especially homeless veterans. That, guys, come on, America, step up. That shouldn't happen. Why are our veterans coming back? They're kids going to war. They come back with PTSD. Of course they do. These are 18-year-olds. Anyway, that's I know. I'll get on that soapbox another day. But yeah. I see anybody in uniform, a fireman, police officer, military, I stop with my kids. I go up to them, shake their hand, and say, thank you for your service. All the time. Good. And I think it's very, very necessary that we have to respect that our freedom is not free. And so many things happen in this country that we are not privileged to that information. We have no clue the risk that we run, but it never touches us because we do have the support system. So I make sure that my kids understand stuff like this. Things happen. Things happen, and you wind up in an instant, you could have nothing. And it affects all of us. So I find it beautiful. Of course, I mean, they've heard the story of Mommy. They've heard how you've gone from foster home to foster home. And your parents, I don't want to say any opinionated words about them, but can't say that I have a whole lot of respect at all when, and I
look at that. And I just think, like, as a mother, I know my mom has to feel pretty bad. I know my dad probably feels bad as well. But when I went back there about 4 years ago, my dad shook my hand at the door after not seeing me for about 15 years. And I'm like, okay. And then I just didn't get well received, and I didn't expect that. After not having been around for a long time. And when I spoke with my mom, about Rylan is 6. So when he was a baby, I had a dream that she passed away, and I lived with guilt of never being able to find out how well she was doing or whatever. And I ended up, she gave me a card, and I called the number, and her very first question out of her mouth was it true what you said about Danny and what he did to you? And I just knew that this relationship was never going to go anywhere. So I'm totally separated from that, and I had to let her go. And again, I could have stayed with it, but the burden on me was to take care of her. And how do I take care of her? Well, she didn't take care of me, and you weren't around my whole life, and just totally disconnected. But I wanted to share really quick, at Christmas time, my kids really, really got to see what my life was like. We were at church on Christmas Eve, and I got a text from my organization to work with at COA, and she's like, "Hey, can anybody go and do a Christmas drive with me at a hotel? There's 3 families with 8 children living in one apartment in a hotel room." And I'm like, I'm right on it. I had a bunch of bags that I had left over from my fundraiser. About 8 bags filled with blankets and teddy bears and coloring books and da-da-da-da. And I packed the car with the presents, and another Molly Flores, she met me there. And my kids actually saw what I actually lived. And they were like, "Mom," and they were so brokenhearted. And of course, I'm not trying to cry in front of these people. And as soon as I get in the car, and I cried all the way home, it just touches me. So it's like, oh, they know no different. That's their life. But my boys really got a piece of humble pie. And so the very next morning, they were super grateful for what was under that tree. I'm like, don't you dare ask for another thing. Like, really, you should be happy. And so they're learning to be very humble for what they have. They are learning to see that there's adversity out there, but you can overcome the adversities. They're just truly blessed, and I just want to bless other people with my knowledge and my expertise, and my thing is validation. Like, none of this is easy. I mean, there are days where I still feel sad and abandoned and lonely. I'm not dating anybody. I'm alone in this world. I have no mom to call on Mother's Day, no dad to call on Father's Day. A friend of mine, when I got married, walked me down the aisle, from a friend of mine from work. And, I don't have a normal life that everybody has. And holidays are really tough for me. I can't wait to get through the holidays. Even though I love the holidays, I just can't wait to get through the holidays. So I just want to get out there. I'm thinking about writing an ebook. Someone quoted me $9,000 to write a book. I'm like, I don't have that. So I'm just looking for people that can give me ideas or resources, direction. I want to go speak. And so I'm just looking for people to open up that door for me. And, there's a will, there's a way, and I pray daily, like, God's opening doors. I had a great week, being interviewed for a magazine. I'm on this show, which I'm so grateful. So thank you, Andy.
You're very welcome, and congratulations on the interview with the magazine. Which magazine publication is it?
It's a world-class beauty queens magazine, so it's a big pageant magazine. And then I was like top 10 for the Miss Elite Fitness Challenge, Body Challenge, whatever you want to call it, last year. So the 40 and over group, I was in the top 10. So it was just like, it was a great week.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you've also started a group. I have a picture up here of, this is your talent competition win, right?
Yeah, that was at Nationals for Miss United States. For Miss California, I did a speech, and I compared myself to being She-Ra. Everybody who's watching probably knows who She-Ra and He-Man were. So that was my character that I described myself to be, like finding my own superpowers within to overcome my adversities. And so my speech was about wielding your weapons and finding what weapons you have inside you. And it's not becoming invisible. It's not becoming the fastest person. It's really finding those characteristics that are going to push you through. And I wanted to do something different for Nationals. And so I was at a Christian concert, and this gentleman was painting a picture. And when he was done, it was just an amazing picture. And I was like, I want to do something like that. And so I clipped together a bunch of pictures off the internet that kind of depicted my story, my life. And as that was filming with some amazing music in the background, I was drawing that picture, but nobody could see it. So when the 3 minutes were up, all I did was hold that picture up, and then I spoke for a little bit. And so I won talent. I won platform, I won interview. So it was a really good weekend, and I think God just has that plan, and just, being patient and just hoping this year is going to rock, and I'm going to get in front of people, write books, or I don't know. God has that plan, and I'm just waiting for that right person to give me that direction, or ideas or suggestions. And so I created a page. It's a baby. I just started it. It's called My Hope, and I want it to be a forum for foster kids and aged out youth to come to and, just chat. Hey, I have this problem. I have a question. Where should I go? What do you think? I'm going to put up some hotlines for them. If they're suicidal, there's a crisis hotline on there right now. There's a video about, the misconceptions of foster kids. So I'm just going to be kind of poking at that. I know kids have devices, they have internet access. And so I'm hoping that one day they're just going to find that and connect. And the more I connect, the more lives I'm going to change.
Oh, that's amazing. And what a great idea. So you're going to have all this information in one group called My Hope.
My Hope, a forum for foster youth and aged out adults.
I love that. I'm thinking faster than I can type.
Okay.
Okay. So, all right. So a forum for foster children.
Mm-hmm. A forum, it's called My Hope, and I don't think there's much out there on that. I know there's an organization called My Hope, but when I drew that picture, that was my hope, was for people to lend a helping hand, to mentor, to just to lend a hand and help these kids and help people. It's so heartbreaking, I don't know. This past Sunday, a 13-year-old girl was found. She went missing, and they titled her at risk in her article. And she ended up being found, she died. And I don't know what the outcome was or what happened, but of course my mind immediately goes to the worst. And I'm just thinking, if she was at risk, like, what do we have available for these kids around here?
Right.
And so I know my organization, COA, super supportive, Pondo Velocity's Terry Steele. There's just amazing people. And they're like, Candice, you tell me what you want to do and we'll make it happen. But my long-term goal is to have my own nonprofit organization where I have a center that I just have community members volunteering their time to come out and just mentor, to have just one thing is helping them get a job, helping them to dress successfully for a job, resume building, getting some interview skills. And those are just the basic things that these kids aren't taught when they are aged out. They don't have anybody guiding them. And so when you're in foster homes or group homes, who's going to do that for you? Your main purpose in life is to exist and try to get through it. And so
we for anybody out there that may be watching, that may know somebody that's applicable, that has a skill set, or possibly they work at a hotline, a suicide prevention line. They do anything within their lives that could help do what you had just mentioned, so that they can get tutoring. They should all go to My Hope, the group page, My Hope, under Candice Woods,
mm-hmm.
and be able to communicate in there. They can communicate with you and possibly get linked up so that you can then start the building blocks of getting everything together in the future. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I like I said, there's so many ways to take this. There's an idea of me wanting to start, part of that nonprofit is to have a place for parents who want to become foster parents. And they're like, okay, gosh, it's really expensive, but a place for them to come and get books if they need books, or clothing, or diapers, or, formula. It's expensive, and you only get so much money per child. And so, I know parents who want to become foster parents, I'm assuming they know the expenses and the things that go along with it, but this is just in case. And then I'm sure it'll branch out to be something bigger and better. You know what I mean? But
Right.
anything that people have to offer that would bring more awareness and more, just the skill set, like you just said, skill set is what can I do for these kids? Who has a direction? How, even like our ebook, like where do I start? Like I have my chapters, but where do you start? It's like, I just need the direction. I want someone to help me focus, guide me. X, Y, and Z needs to be done before you jump into that. You know what I mean? And so living the life that I live as a full-time teacher, a mentor, a master teacher, doing Miss Elite, all this stuff. I'll make time, but I just need that expert out there that is willing to help me and guide me.
Okay. Well, I'm going to put this interview out there everywhere so that hopefully we will get in touch and in front of some people that will go to the group My Hope, or will find you, and I'm going to take My Hope down so that we can see your name in your beautiful picture. Let's say goodbye to that. So we see Candice Woods, as CandiceWoods, and they can find you on Facebook. You're also on Instagram.
Yay.
And Instagram is
I Can Teach 7. I kind of did that to hide from my students, but they find me anyway.
I Can Teach 7.
Yes.
Okay. And so there it is. There's your Instagram handle, so everybody can find you there as well. Mm-hmm. And what we're looking for is for people to chime in, to comment in the group, to comment on this video, and we're going to be watching it. And I'll definitely, if I see it first, I'm going to say, hey, Candice, take a look at this, because every idea is a good idea. So if anybody out there has any idea and possibly they see, and I think your vision is easy to see. So you have a very smart, accomplished, beautiful woman who has lived homelessness, who has lived with parents that are just not worthy to be parents. And you've been in 14 different foster homes. You know the system, you understand it, and you want to help. So how do you get started? There's suicide prevention that's needed. There's libraries that are needed. There's tutors needed. There's everything and anything you can think of that is needed in a normal life is not supplied for these children.
Or it's very scarce, for sure. Yes. We do have the one organization in the center of Orange County, but there's one organization. And there's probably a couple others out there, but the ones that are mainly for Orange County is that Orange Wood Foundation. And so they do have a little resource center, but I'm 16, 20 miles away. And if these kids don't have a car, how are they going to get there? And so you could take public transportation, but even some don't even know how to do that. And so it's really teaching these kids on how to become successful participants in the world, and even if they hold down a job at McDonald's, at least they're holding down a job. If they're breaking their cycle somehow, that's the part that I think is scary, and they need support from that. And one person can change that life, one person. And it's all about your words and your actions. It's consistency. It's being understanding and validating and not trying to fix. I think that's what turns kids off, is that these adults come in and fix. It's definitely a skill, but it's a very easy skill to learn. It's just to listen. It is a lot of listening. So.
Well, Candice, thank you so much. Oh, I'm very excited, and I'm so blessed that we made this connection, because in the conversation that we had before the interview and this interview tonight, I've grown as a person to really know and be able to meet and have a conversation with someone who has pushed through, and the tenacity, the integrity that you have. Just be proud of everything that you've done, and really pat yourself on the back, because you absolutely deserve it.
Thank you.
And just to hear that story of where you've come from, and you've pushed way beyond anywhere I've ever gone through education. And that takes a lot of work. And
It does. It like I said earlier, it's a lot of sacrificing
Yeah.
and knowing that event, if it doesn't look like it's going to pay off now, it's going to pay off at some point. It's just keeping with the tenacity and the grit and knowing that I've always felt, excuse me, that I've had a purpose. Like God had written my story for a reason, and he uses, it's unfortunate, right? Like why would God want that? But he uses us as vessels to be of service later. And so this is my calling, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So there are haters out there for sure, but I'm focusing on the good ones.
Exactly. You focus on the positivity, and I love the direction. Everybody, please, anybody that has any ideas, please comment them in. We're going to be watching. And Candice, I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank
you. I can't wait to see what step you decide to go after first. Would you do me the honor of having you come back on if it happens?
Absolutely.
Maybe a book, maybe a hotline, maybe a facility, maybe the world is in your hands. So it could be anything.
Oh, isn't that great?
It is. It really is. So thank you so much, because I can't wait to have you.
Thank you, Andy, if you're watching, for hooking me up with Miss Elizabeth Cooper.
Thank you, Candice. Well, we hope that you have a great night and have a great weekend.
Yes, it's going to be hot here this weekend, like 80 something.
Oh, I wish. Oh,
we're freezing today in our 40 degrees this morning and 60 degrees today. I was still cold, but.
Oh my goodness.
All right, you guys.
Enjoy it.
Everybody.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Wow, what a beautiful woman. I'm going to put her picture up here again. I mean, look at this. So her group, My Hope, follow that group. This is really interesting. And this woman has gone through so much, and she really, really wants to get some of these doors to open for her. She has a title. She has accomplishments. She is a teacher. She's well respected in the community. But even still, it is really hard to get through the door, to get into the foster homes, to actually be able to physically work with the kids. So now here it is. We kind of have to figure out, how do you still work with the kids? How do you get to them to be able to help and to assist with things that they need? And how are you able to be there for them? Because there are trust issues. You know, everybody in their life, when they pack up and go from foster home to foster home, they lose. So you can be in a really great foster home, and it's very loving and it's a warm environment, and next week you gotta leave and go to possibly one that isn't so loving, and you don't get to like keep numbers of people and be able to call them up and say, hey, you know, you don't. It's complete detachment after detachment. And no child should go through that. And there are 500,000 kids in the foster care system. So it's so needed. Please help. Please comment. Candice would be so ever grateful, and so would I. And thank you for watching. Please share this out to anybody that you know that may be able to help. I really appreciate it. And as always, I love you. You are loved. You are blessed with even the smallest thing that you may have. Always be grateful, and have a great weekend. I will see you soon. Good night.